Anti-government protesters remain defiant on the streets of Egypt for a second week, their voice getting louder. Their demands remain unchanged.
This is a revolution in making.
As the Mubarak regime struggles to survive, Al-Jazeera brings you a day-by-day account of the popular uprising on the streets of Egypt, from those that witnessed them firsthand.
And watching this happen.
Standoff on the Nile, at this time on Al Jazeera.
This is Al Jazeera.
Welcome to the News Hour, live from Doha. I'm Anand Naidu. From Al Jazeera News Centers in Doha and Washington, D.C., these are the main stories. Fighting on the latest Libyan frontline, both pro- and anti-Gaddafi forces claim they control oil-rich Brega. As tens of thousands of people scramble to get out of Libya, the United Nations appeals for help to secure their safety.
I'm Shab Ratansi in Washington with the top stories from the Americas.
Let's just call a spade a spade. A no-fly zone begins with an attack on Libya.
A clear explanation from the U.S. Defense Secretary of the full implications of a no-fly zone. Also, the U.S. Army slaps 22 new charges against the soldier accused of leaking thousands of secret U.S. documents.
And 2 U.S. servicemen are killed after a gunman opens fire at a German airport. It's just gone 4 a.m. in Libya, where the conflict between those opposed to Muammar Gaddafi and those loyal to him rages on. The country's leader has given yet another public address, arguing the situation is being spun out of control. Gaddafi is also warning against foreign intervention and has vowed to fight until the last man. But his forces don't appear to be having much success. On Wednesday, there was a fierce fight in the strategic port town of Brega between forces loyal to Gaddafi and opposition fighters. Both sides say they now control the area. Brega has a large oil refinery, which is apparently still held by anti-Gaddafi forces. Those forces got a much-needed boost from the town of Benghazi, which is the epicenter of the uprising in the east of the country. Gaddafi's forces also raided an arms dump in the city of AlJazeera, which is also under opposition control. In addition to its control in the east, the opposition also controls the town of Zawiya and Misrata near the capital. Tony Bertley has this roundup of the day's events.
It was a call to arms that was answered by thousands. From the towns and the desert, opposition fighters gathered in Ajdabiya to repel an attack by forces loyal to Gaddafi. Their weapons range from the powerful tanks and anti-aircraft batteries to those more at home in a museum. There was confusion and disorganization. Shells were fired out. Complaints returned as residents ahead explained they were coming under fire from their own side.
What about the capability? I mean, you've got a lot of men here and you've got a lot of weapons. Can the men use the weapons?
God willing, they will learn to use the weapons effectively.
The conviction of the volunteers has to be admired. The capability is open to question. Gaddafi's forces were said to number around 300 men. They attacked the strategically important town of Brega at first light, and witnesses said they began firing indiscriminately.
This is in the morning. Many people come in mafia for Gaddafi. He killed many people in the morning.
Heavy weapons were sent forward and hundreds of trucks and cars stacked with ammo and guns taken from captured army stockpiles. Casualties came back. Many hurt, he told us, many dead.
This doesn't seem to have been a full-fledged assault, more like a probing attack. But it shows that Gaddafi forces are strong, they can strike at will, and that the Libyan leader shows no signs of giving up. Quite the contrary, he's hitting back.
10 kilometers from Brega and more forces congregated. No one seemed to know exactly what was happening. Then a Libyan Air Force bomber circled overhead. Its first bombing run hit close to the center of the fighting near Brega University. The second hit our position. landing 70 meters away. Miraculously, no one was hurt. Then Gaddafi's fighters fled.
We suddenly saw some Toyota cars with anti-aircraft batteries. They started firing mortar rounds. The shells fell near us.
They left behind spent mortar, shell and machine gun casings and 10 dead civilians. 21 people were wounded, including a 7-year-old boy who survived a bullet lodged in his nose.
These people who were killed, were they fighters or were they ordinary people?
Ordinary people. Ordinary people, he is going, when Gaddafi's people, he is coming to university.
2 of the bodies were said to be of Gaddafi fighters. It was claimed one carried ID showing he was from Niger in Africa, but it's hard to verify. Despite the howls of bravado, this brazen attack has provoked both fear and anger and reminds everyone of the violent threats of Gaddafi. On Wednesday, we witnessed why the opposition is desperate for a no-fly zone and why it may not have the military capability to liberate all of Libya by force just yet. But this conflict seems far from over, and the question is how many more Libyans are going to die before it is. Tony Bertley, AlJazeera, Brega, Eastern Libya.
Meanwhile, thousands of Gaddafi supporters gathered on Wednesday in his stronghold Tripoli. They chanted pro-Gaddafi slogans as they gathered in the city's Green Square. The rally came as the Libyan leader gave yet another lengthy speech, lasting 3 hours this time, again vying to hang on to power. He also lashed out at the West for interfering and warned that thousands of Libyans will die if US and NATO forces intervene in the conflict. And the humanitarian situation is worsening. The UN says as many as 180,000 people have fled Libya through its borders with Egypt and Tunisia. These were scenes on the Tunisian side of the border on Wednesday, where tens of thousands remain stranded. Most of them are Egyptians trying to get out. Some nations have already started airlifting refugees back to their home countries. The United Nations is carrying out most of the relief work. It says food and tents are its biggest priorities. James Bays has more on the situation in Ras Ashdir on the Libyan-Tunisian border.
The situation here at the border crossing has eased dramatically in the last few hours. Let me show you the situation here. This blue gate is the actual border. The other side is Libya. And if you look out there, there are still people waiting, but this area 24 hours ago was packed